Sales Crunch. Learn more, earn more.
Okay, hello everybody. We're just taking the final seconds to bring in anybody who is late. I am your host, Gene, and welcome to this online sales class on how to gain psychological advantage in sales, the things that you need to know to sell like a Jedi. This presentation is going to be about 20 minutes long, and there's going to be a question and answer segment at the end for about 5 or 10 minutes. If at any point during the presentation you have a question, please type it in and we'll be happy to answer it at the end. All right, so I'm just going to get started. First, I want to introduce myself. My name is Gene Plotkin, and here's a picture of me before I've done this and people wanted to see what I actually looked like. And just to tell you a little bit about me, so to help set the context for what's going on, my background has been in marketing and sales for the last 6 years. In addition to that, also a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic psychology and programming, as well as a certified hypnotist. So what this really means is that I understand people's behavior and, more importantly, how different people behave in sales situations. Influence has always been something I've been very fascinated about. And especially when it comes to how is it that certain people you seem to be able to sell to really easily, and there's other types of people you just don't seem to go anywhere with. Or sometimes you seem like you have such great momentum, and then nothing turns of it. So, when I started sales and when I started combining these things, I noticed that there are some people out there that were less talented than I thought I was. That didn't work quite as hard, but they seem to be getting results. And I'm sure that as salespeople, we all ask ourselves that question when we see somebody who's a top producer and you go, how can this person be better than me? They're not as good looking or as talented or hardworking as I am. How are they managing to get these sales where I'm not? And then the other question that always comes up is, what makes people buy the things that they buy? And even if they can't afford it, or even if it's something that's completely useless to them, there's something that goes on inside a person and a process that's going on in order to make them buy the things that they buy. And yes, that is, in fact, a solid gold-covered Porsche. There's 40 pounds of gold covering that Porsche. So why do people do things like this? If you ever wondered why people do things like this, then this is the questions that we're going to answer. So before we go into this, I just wanted to let you know that I'm assuming that the things that you're selling to people are the things that they truly actually need. And if you're coming here to try and learn some kind of techniques to get people to do what they don't want to do, I'm going to tell you it's a really dangerous game, because ultimately you're going to ruin your reputation and you're going to lose a lot of sales long term, and that is not what sales is really about. However, when you incorporate the powerful techniques I'm teaching you today, what it will give you is it'll give you more happy customers, it'll get you more referral, and it'll get you more repeat business and ultimately more sales and more satisfaction with your job. So why the term, why would people look like a Jedi if they actually mastered this stuff? Well, the reason is that the communication that we see on a conscious level it's only the tip of the iceberg. Because the real sale happens much, much deeper. It happens on a whole level. And when you understand what to look for, and more importantly, how to look for those things, then you'll be able to communicate directly with part of the person that's responsible for buying that. You'll be able to trigger that particular emotion, that particular response when you need it. So let me go right into it. And let me start by saying that sales is all about neurons. If you're a little bit confused, that's right. You're right where you have to be. If you're asking, what do you mean by that? It's simple. All sales is decisions. All decisions are a set of specific neurons firing in the brain at a specific sequence at a specific time. In order for somebody to make a buying decision, there is a certain thing that has to happen to them internally. Those neurons have to fire. So this seminar is really about how do we get to those specific neurons to fire when we want them to fire, rather than having to go around and make lots and lots of calls and progress very little. So the first principle is this. Every single buying decision that's ever been made has been made on an emotional level. It's a gut decision. We buy with our gut, we justify with the head. If you don't believe this, then think back to a time where you've gone grocery shopping to a supermarket, or perhaps you went to a restaurant and you were hungry. You probably ordered tons more food than you needed. And it wasn't until you got out, until you weren't hungry anymore, and you actually started to go into a different state that you looked at and you said, why did I order all this food? Yet at the time, it seemed perfectly logical and it made all the sense in the world. And again, this is why we're always taught in sales to pitch the benefit, don't pitch the feature. Because benefits speak to the emotional part of us, right? So unless you activate the emotional component in the sale, then the person will, one of two things will happen. Either the person will not find what you're saying relevant, or more likely they'll find it relevant, but they will not find it important enough for right now. They won't find it urgent. Because the brain is always asking, why should I care and why should I care now? And if you're not getting your clients into the kind of emotional state that they need to be in order to buy, then you're not going to create any kind of urgency. And this is why the sales cycle takes a lot longer than it needs to. Well, that's right. So how do we get to the emotional triggers? Usually pain and pleasure are a really good thing to trigger all of those particular emotions. Another thing is values. And more importantly than what those things are, is how is it specifically that this particular customer that's in front of you is representing that to themselves. Because each one of us has a completely different internal strategy that we go to, that we go through in order to buy something, right? So if we don't have their pain, their pleasure, and their values, and we don't know how they're expressing it, we could be doing our best pitch, but even our best pitch is going to be kind of like throwing darts at the dartboard blindfolded. You know the general direction of the dartboard, and you're hoping you're going to throw enough of them, and one of them will actually hit the bullseye. If, however, you get to the pain, you get to the pleasure, you get to the values of this person for this particular service or product that they're buying, and you're able to tie that in with your message, you're going to become laser precise. All you need to say is a couple of things, and it'll look like magic to the people that don't understand the process. So I touched upon values just a little bit. What are values to begin with? So for our purposes, values are the driving principles behind why people do what they do. They are the things that ultimately select what emotion you're going to feel in which particular situation. And a lot of salespeople, I feel, completely miss this huge opportunity to find out such a big trigger. So how do we find out somebody's values? It's simple. You ask a very powerful and direct question. What is important to you about that? Whatever product or service you're selling. What else is important, and why is that important? So what's important to you in buying a new home? Well, it has to be next to transportation, and we have to have a big backyard. And why is that important? Because we're planning on having a big family. We just got a dog. It's something that's very important to us. What's important to you about setting up a lead generation system? Well, it has to be qualified leads, and we have to have the ability to get it to our salespeople quickly. go deeper and find out why is that important and so on. So once you actually find out what's important to your client, what their values are for this particular situation, you now need to do a very important thing. You now need to tie your benefit to your customer's value. And this is where I think a lot of rapport is lost. And I think the big reason for it is just not taught how to communicate, especially not in school, for things like paraphrasing, right? This is the big trick. When the customer is giving you a specific value or something that's important to them, that word holds a specific place in their mind. So the best way to think about it is those blocks that you played with when you were a kid. Somebody gives you an important value or a pain of theirs, right? They give it to you in a certain shape. And we call it a word, right? So when they give that particular shape to you, all you need to do is to give it right back to them, and it goes right back in exactly where the missing space was. What most people do, they paraphrase, they try to say it in their own way, and this is the mental equivalent of that. It's like taking a rectangular or triangle shape and trying to fit it into a round hole. It doesn't work. And from a customer's point of view, when you're telling them that are things that are slightly like what they're saying, but not really. So a great example would be if somebody says, what's important to me is freedom. And you respond with, so you don't want to be micromanaged. Now, to you, freedom and micromanaged mean the same thing, but to them, it's worlds apart. And their unconscious mind, their brain is saying, at a deeper level, it's saying, this person doesn't understand me, and I cannot trust this person. And this breaks rapport. So it's simple. Just repeat it to the customer using the same exact gestures, language, and inflection of your voice that they said something to you. So if they're saying, I am looking for a car that's very reliable, and I also really want to feel excited when I'm driving it, just repeat that back to them. So you're looking for a reliable car, and you want to feel excited when you're driving it. And they're going to go, yes, you got it, exactly. So now that we have the value, the pain, the pleasure, as well as the particular hot words and triggers, there's still another layer to this process. If you ever notice that there are certain people you're much better for selling to than others, this is probably why. So the way our brain processes information is in three primary modalities. We have the way we feel, the way we see, and the way we hear. Or kinesthetic, visual, and auditory. And each one of these particular modalities is wired to a different part of the brain. Now, we all use all of these some of the time. When it comes to buying, however, there is usually a primary system, representational system that we use in order to make a buying decision. What happens a lot of times is that people are on two different wavelengths when it comes to what representational system they're using. And this is why if you're representing things visually, chances are you're much better at selling visually. What happens if your client is not the kind of person to buy visually? What if they're kinesthetic? What if they buy based on how they're feeling and how this product is making them feel in this particular moment? And you're telling them about all of this visual, using all of this visual language. So let me give you a couple of different examples for what each kind of language sounds like, right? So visual people usually make very vivid images, and they would say something like, can you see what I'm saying? They will say things like, we need to bring that more into focus. I'm still not clear on it. And once you listen to this, once you listen forward, I should say, you're going to realize just how many people communicate in different styles. And your messages are going to be that much more tailored, right? So another example of what a visual person may say is, let me shed some light on this issue, or I feel, or it's completely dark to me and how we're going to get this deal done. With auditory people, they're going to use a lot of language that describes sound, right? I hear that. Or they will say something along the lines of, I like the sound of that, I think we're in tune, that strikes a chord with me. So all of these different auditory sound type of words, and when you listen to them, you'll be able to hear that that's what they are. Then you have the kinesthetic people, and kinesthetic people communicate primarily through their body. In other words, they're going to use language like, that feels right to me. I like the feel of that. It's a good fit. Or I can't get a grip on it. Or even words like, it's a real weight off my shoulders, or that's a really heavy burden to be carrying.
Sales Crunch. Learn more, earn more.